in a recession is a great time to start a business like a marketing company because
That's you.
you're in need. It's
It
a
didn't
hard
feel
time.
like it.
Say that again, sorry?
I said it didn't feel like it, but I know what you mean, right?
That's right. Yeah. If I would say if we were just doing things the way they were always done.
Welcome to the Your Message Received podcast. And now, taking your message to the finish line, your host, John Duffin.
Hey, folks, John Duffin here, Duffin Media. Welcome back to another episode of Your Message Received. Your Message Received is the home, the place, the platform to help you find your most true, authentic business voice. In fact, maybe it's just your most true, authentic voice. Get what you want, find what you need, improve your results, make billions of dollars. That's exactly why we have today's guest here today, who assured me prior that he'll make certain that we all make billions of dollars, or maybe not. But we can always hope, right? And I love the fact that people keep watching and liking and sharing and all that sort of thing. And one of the reasons I feel like we're doing well is we get to continue to bring people onto the platform that walk the walk. And I'm confident that I get to say today is no exception. First off, Dave Taylor from InFront Marketing, co-founder of InFront Marketing. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, John. Happy to be here.
Hey, look, it is absolutely my pleasure to have you. And folks, just as I said again, in terms of so it doesn't come off as random as all of that, what I would easily say is we got somebody here who is a digital marketing leader, sports events guy. We were talking about my weird fixation with a Canadian accent, and the fact is somebody who knows how to implement data-driven stories is the utilization that we'll talk about as well too. It's really great that you're here, man. I really appreciate you.
Yeah, I'm excited to kick this off.
Yeah, you and me both. And with that being said, one of the very first things that I think about is the sense that we talk about the ease and the difficulty and what have you of building a business. You're in with a partner, correct? I mean, in terms of the current landscape. John McColeman, if I did my homework properly.
That's right. Yep. John and I started the business in 2015. So just crossed our 10th year anniversary.
Amazing. And I'm going to ask you this. Why did you feel compelled to launch a business at all, let alone have it succeed? Why did you?
Yeah, for me it was, and I think many people who work in a corporate structure understand the handcuffs, and it was breaking free of those handcuffs. And as we continue this conversation about data, John and I came from a corporate structure in the advertising business, and that corporate company didn't want to track data to a point where they had to be accountable for sales, revenue, and ROI. So they wanted to push, the impressions, the clicks, the visibility, and then leave it up to the business owner to tell you whether or not there was impact in the business. And, after John was there for 6 years, I was there for 3 years, and it just got to a point where when we were reporting, we didn't have enough stats to truly back up, what was actually happening in the business. And you rely too much on the business owner to tell you what's happening, and they don't know. And we just knew through partnerships and through our own experience, if we started doing things our own way, we could probably break the mold a little bit. And that really gave us, I guess, the motivation to start the business.
Walk me backwards a little bit before I want to land in that arena that you just said, but walk me back a little bit in terms of the reasons you chose this path for yourself professionally, not just the company, but why, like I said, what appealed to you? What got you into the field?
Yeah, I think in terms of marketing or just in terms of running a business?
No,
yeah,
marketing first.
Yeah, I fell into it. I was a sales guy. At 18 years old, I got dropped off on a street corner and realized I was going door to door. I had kind of no idea what I was getting into, and it just worked. I did it for a year. I had so much fun. I couldn't stop. People think of door to door sales as as one of the hardest, most challenging jobs, but it's also one of the funnest, and financially it's very rewarding, especially for a young person.
Yeah.
So I was motivated by the money, but also I was just having fun. And we had really kind of combed our pitch to a point where most people, and we're talking about a sales team of 15, 20 people in the field, doing 6 or 8 deals a day in an 8-hour day. We had it clean to a point where we were doing 20 to 25 deals in a 4-hour period, from 4 p.m. to 8 p.m. We knew when people were going to be home. We knew the conversations we were having, and we knew that we could knock on a door, get in, sign a deal, and get out in 6 minutes and get on to the next house. And really what we were doing was saving people money on their electricity and gas bills. And, we were doing long-term contracts and deals for an energy provider here that I look back on and go, I can honestly say we saved people a lot of money doing it. So it turned into something that, again, I was proud of. I turned that into working in a retail store and in a retail environment. I turned that into a management role, which turned into a marketing role. And I started learning the ins and outs of advertising for a small business, and messaging and creating ads and just the basics. But from there, I got recruited to work at the Yellow Pages, and as much as everybody, doesn't love the Yellow Pages nowadays, it was an amazing training program. So combine that with just the learning that I was doing on my own, and the transitional period that I was involved in from print to digital. I had a great foundational experience of learning what digital advertising was. And then when I met John, when I moved to the media business, John was light years ahead of our sales team on the digital side. His knowledge of data tracking and just the ins and outs of digital advertising. He was running a team in Western Canada of 30 some odd sales reps and 14-15 million dollars annually in revenue. And I was again there helping with the transition from a print product to a digital product. And ultimately, I just, through that whole journey, there was just something in the back of my head that I just loved marketing. I just loved the idea of creating ads, creating messaging, working with small businesses. I was no longer a salesperson. I was consulting, and it kind of just evolved into being somebody that people could lean on and trust. And it's funny because even today, people think of marketing people as salespeople, but we're really tasked with helping people identify challenges and find ways to grow their business and become a real integral part of their story and their journey. And so it was something, again, that I'm a very prideful guy. And as I continued to move through my career, I was able to really be proud of the things that I was doing. And it kept me really focused on staying in marketing.
You said a couple things, and I love that full scope in terms of a setup. But there's a couple things I want to follow up on in that regard too. First off, when you talked about early and you talked about you used the word fun, what do you remember? I mean, look, success is fun and results are fun, but it's a different thing. What was fun for you? What were you feeling when you were starting out that felt fun?
I'm the kind of guy, especially in sales, that if I can make somebody laugh, I feel like they're coming along the journey with me. So, it's finding little quirky moments to have fun with somebody and learn about, their own personal story. As a salesperson, I was never the hard closer. I was always just trying to figure out ways that what I was doing would sort of help others. So in doing that, you build personal relationship with people, even if it's 6 minutes at the door or 20 minutes on the phone call, or, some of our clients have been with us for 7 or 8 years. We have really personal relationships. So I find our conversations with them to be fun and exciting because I'm always learning about what's going on, and I feel challenged. I feel, fun for me comes with a challenge. So if I feel challenged, then again, it's something I can be proud of. It's something I can be excited about. I can find fun in it. Going door to door, I'll never forget, the guy swinging his screen door at me because he didn't want me on his front step. And, I was able to take that to the very next
what, you were supposed to land backwards, roll down the steps, or that?
I guess, right? He didn't want me there. So he used the tools he had access to get me off his step. So it's fine. I went to the very next house. I was laughing And sure enough, they know the neighbor, they know his personality, and we had a conversation about, just quickly what had happened. And, they welcomed me into their house. I closed a deal at that door. And I did it, primarily because when they opened the door, I was just laughing. And they're wondering, why is this guy laughing? Why is this guy having so much fun walking down the street? And that, I've carried that with me on all my sales calls. It's been 22 years since that moment happened. And I remember it like it happened yesterday. And I remember it when I do sales calls that are challenging, because, the hard ones lead to the good ones for sure.
And that's why I brought it up, is because there's a lot of what you said in there that a lot of people wouldn't necessarily interpret as fun. And I'll get to the yellow pages in a moment that you were talked about, because to me, that's something. Well, I'll just get to it. Sorry. Let me try it that way, which is this. When you talk about, you said earlier, hey, I didn't identify myself as a hard closer. And door-to-door sales and yellow pages, somebody I know in Philadelphia that was a monster in yellow page sales management, sales training. And I looked at those things both as a hard closer, yet like sorts of thing, a limited amount of time to get somebody to make a decision, or you got some dude that wants to swing you off of his front steps, right? That it's a limited amount of time. How did you make that work if you weren't necessarily a hard closer? Was it the fun aspect or the laughing aspect, or how did you make it go?
I think, it was a numbers game for me.
Okay, right.
We always played games, about who could get to the end of the street faster, but also do it with a number of deals closed.
Yep.
So that was part of it. And again, that's what evolving the 6 minute in the door and out of the door pitch to close. It was a game to us. So it, as much as, we were doing it with purpose, we were doing our, side deals. And it's like, when you're out golfing and you've got your skins game going or whatever you've got with your buddies, there's always a game on the side. So, the other part of it was when I worked at the Yellow Pages, I would make 75 phone calls a day. And I would say most people working in my role would make 15 or 20.
Okay.
And a lot of people would just say, well, I just don't even know who to call. But whenever we opened a new book or we opened a new city, I would find, the directory, usually a Chamber of Commerce directory or something. I would print the entire directory, and then I would hand it to our sales team, because I knew I couldn't do,
all
1,000 pages of business calls. So I would give it to our sales team. We had 6 people in our team, or, and there's 70 people or whatever in our channel. Right. But I would give it to our team, and then again we would play a game. Who can make it through the most? Because if you make it through your 6 pages, you come to me, you get more. And then all we're doing is just checking the system. Oh, this business is not in our system, so now we're going to call them. And I would just make as many calls as I could. And again, even with our sales team now, managing a team, we're making a 5-minute phone call to do an introduction. We're not making a 30-minute phone call or a 60-minute phone call to close a deal. We're making a 5-minute phone call to introduce the business, to uncover, if people are working with agencies, if people are doing SEO, if people are doing Google ads, if they're having struggles with their website, we're making a 5-minute introductory phone call so we can get off the phone and get to the next one. And when we have challenges, or, I couldn't get to the decision maker. Oh, I couldn't get to have a real conversation with somebody. Well, that's not the point. The point is to set up that conversation. The point is to move as quickly as you can, so that when you're making those sales calls or when you're making those connections, you can do as many of them as possible. And then once you've finished that 5-minute phone call, the setup is for the half an hour or the 60-minute discovery call, so you can actually learn about the business. When people ask me on that 5-minute phone call, well, what do you know about my business? Well, I don't know anything. The goal is for me to find time to learn about your business. But if I invest all this time learning about your business before I get to know you, then, that's a waste of my time, because you might not answer the phone, or you might not talk to me, or you might swing the screen door at me. But if I can come and just give you a quick introduction, we can build a little bit of rapport. we can move on to the next steps about having a real conversation about your business, and we can find time for that. So, when the sales guys always talk about oh, do you have half an hour for me? I'm not asking for that. I'm asking for a couple of minutes, and then I'm at the end of that hoping that I've built enough rapport that you'll give me a half an hour. So yeah, it's a numbers game. When you stop thinking I've got to close every deal, and you start thinking about I've got to hit the X amount of numbers in terms of calls or emails or outreach or door knocking or whatever it is,
Right.
you start finding little gems along the way because you've given yourself the space to do it.
I think that's one of the things, one of the reasons I'm so glad you illuminate those points, which is I think that we lose a lot of salespeople, a lot of good salespeople, or a lot of good talent because of the unnecessary pressure that people are putting on themselves, that I have to close this in 6 minutes, or I have to win you over, or I have to be able to handle every objection. And that's why I ask you, when, like, someone like you, to elaborate on it, because to me, I think the more talent in a field, the better. I'm not in you only need so many good, client relationship specialists or salespeople or leaders. I think there's probably room at the table for all of them. But I think so often people take themselves out of the game because they're not using the term you just used, which is a game. And so that sense of, oh, I can't do this, or oh my God, I'm not that type. Thanks for making it relatable. Which makes it a heck of a lot more interesting, I think. I love the fact you also seem to be a generous person in what can also, in so often, what can be a very competitive field, meaning that you talk about divvying up the Chamber of Commerce and all that sort of thing, that you're giving everyone ample opportunity to succeed. And I think that's really important. How would you define yourself as a leader?
I'm a doer, and I think it's a fault as a leader, but it's also something that I hope that people can see. And if I'm head down and I'm working and I'm growing the business and I'm working with my clients and my clients are having success, I want someone to step up and say, "How are you doing it?" And then I can explain, what's going on in my world. It's hard for me to go to somebody and push them and say, if you just made 75 phone calls, you'd be fine. It's not. It's well, here's what I did today, and here's how I did it. And the approach that I took was, I knew I needed to make a certain amount of phone calls, so that's what I did. And in doing so, I uncovered, something. So for me, it's important to do it. 10 years in the business, John and I still handle a large majority of the clients, and then we're supporting the sales team. And one thing that John and I had to learn how to do is actually not spend time together in meetings or with clients, because that's, as you said, we were taking the approach of, oh, well, two heads are better than one. We can be involved in this, and we can really share our experience, and you're going to have a different take on this, and I'm going to have a different take on this. But we recognized it wasn't a good use of our time. And if you look at our time, let's say as a marketing consultant, my time is valued at maybe $125 an hour. As a business owner or a founder, my time could be valued as high as $325 an hour. When I look at that and I go, now John and I have donated, $600 worth of time for a discovery meeting by the two of us being here, it doesn't make sense. So again, we had to learn how to take that and go, okay, yes, we want to collaborate. Yes, we want to work with clients that, may need a different approach from time to time. But, we needed to, again, separate ourselves and work independently and just continue to grow our relationships and grow our client base. So as much as, I'm not a micromanager, I try to be supportive of my team members. I'll join them in meetings if I need to, but I want to empower them with as many resources as we can to try to close the deal. So again, it comes down to doing something, sharing how you did it, why you did it, and then allowing somebody to follow the same path and create, their own way of doing things. And then when you recognize struggles, identifying that in the weekly sales meeting, identifying challenges, identifying opportunities, and again, trying to come up with ways that we can look for what our goals are going to be for the week, and can those be achieved independently? Do you need support? What does that look like? So communication, I think, I'm a doer. I'm an independent guy. Sometimes, again, I walk in, I walk out, and I go, oh, I've got to, engage with everybody that's here because I'm so, focused on my work. But again, being a doer, that's kind of the way things go. But then finding time, like I said, in the sales meeting to identify challenges and set goals, and then making sure support is there. I think John and I have set the standard to a point where, anybody can walk in this door, they can ask questions, they know they're going to get support. If somebody is having a really opportunistic sales or a sales call or a meeting, they know we're going to be jumping in. And again, it's not to prevent somebody from working a deal on their own. It's just to be a sound resource. And I can't tell you again how many meetings I've sat in and just say, I'm just here to listen and support and provide my 2 cents. We've got a great account manager here who's going to lead the conversation, so we empower them. We build them up. We try to build up anybody who comes into a sales meeting. If it's a technical person,
Right.
We're going to make sure that they're positioned as a leader. Their voice is going to be heard, and their voice is going to have weight when they speak. And I just think it's really important as a leader to not overstep or talk too much or take the ball when someone else should be running with it. So yeah, there is no one way. I think as a leader, you've got to identify different situations and identify how you can participate in those situations to be effective and empower the people around you. Because if you're doing everything, you're not really a leader. If you're the guy
you're just another worker.
That's right. You just end up being you might as well be a solopreneur at that point instead of a leader.
Here's what, in terms of one follow-up question on that, which is with your team, right? You said, hey, I'm typically a doer, if I heard correctly. I'm typically a doer. And there were times where I come into the office and I forget that, oh, I need to interact with my team and all that sort of. How long did it take you to realize that?
Oh, a long time. Yeah, a long time for sure. Because as a doer, you don't notice it. You just do it.
I say that because I was guilty very much of that in the beginning. So that's the only reason I'm asking.
Yeah, the other side of it is John is great at just building relationships with our staff and with the people who are here. To a point where, again, learning about people's families and learning about things that are outside the business. And he took me aside one day and just said, hey, I just need you to start doing weekly shout outs to the team and telling them how good they're doing. I just need you to, come in and hang out around the water cooler for 20 minutes at the beginning of the day once in a while. And so I kind of thought to myself, I'm guilty. I'm guilty of not investing enough time to learn about people. I trust them. I hired them because I trust them. Yeah. And I want them to independently do the job. I want them to know I'm not looking over their shoulder. I want them to know I'm not micromanaging them. But you still have to build relationships with people. And so as a doer, that's the hardest part, is remembering that it's, there's a space for work. There's a space for learning about people's lives. And, I'm guilty of, what happens in my life happens in my life. So I don't need to share that as much. But, I recognized over the years that it was important just to peel back the curtains and let people know who I am. And I'm not a boss. I'm growing a business, and I need them to help us grow.
I think it's terribly important. And again, I was guilty of it. So I like hearing that, simply in the sense that because you get the opportunity to learn and grow, and especially when you realize it. And even better for you that you have a partner, John, who not only realized it, but gave you the heads up. And I think that's the mark of a great partnership, is when somebody's cool enough to be like, hey, I need you to, rather than being afraid to, or, hey, no, that's just Dave, that's his thing. That when you're really looking at growth, that's you want to keep all those doors open so that everybody grows, man.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, it's funny, I just to take this conversation to the side a little bit, I coach youth soccer and I coach youth ball
yeah,
hockey,
yeah,
and I have to talk to our coaches about their communication style to the
mhm,
kids. It's not a why did you do that? It's a hey, I recognized you did something there. Maybe we could try this and it'll help you, do something a little bit differently or maybe do something a little bit better. And so I think that again, John took that approach with me. We try
mhm,
to take that approach with our employees,
mhm,
and I think it's important to recognize that the things that with the approach that we take to our kids can be similar to the approach that we take to everything. Because for us, if we're just beating people down, going,
right.
"Why'd you do that?"
Mhm.
They're going to quit. They're going to quit the sport. They're going to quit the
Sure,
job.
sure.
They're going to walk away. And B, even if they stay, they're not going to be engaged. So
Mhm.
so that is something that I recognized before I ever got into coaching, and when I
That's
did get
great.
into coaching, I felt like I was empowered to help our other coaches recognize that they were maybe their language was a bit off with the
Mhm.
kids, and that you have those conversations with people and they're well received because they're trying to learn too, and I think that's important as a leader to recognize that everybody around you is hey, we brought them in because we trust them, but they're still learning, and we have to figure out how to support that learning. And we hire self-taught learners because
Mm.
it's really important for people to always be learning. But then when they don't know something, sometimes we're like, well, why don't you have the answer? But they're not supposed to. They're just
No,
supposed to be the type of
because who
person that can figure
does?
out how to get it right.
Hey,
So
so I love that's that sort of evolution. I think is great. So I remember, like we talked before we went live, in terms of say an evolution of a company. So as you had shared earlier, again, if I heard correctly, that the part where with corporate and that sense of mystery or being a little bit fearful to fully transpose numbers. Nothing murky or dark about it. That it was a sense that's how business was done in my field. Again, with the ratings, it was I never could say the word right. I'm embarrassed. A statistical. There you go. A statistical choice of algorithms based on sample size, which never gave you the exact. And nobody was trying to hide behind anything. It's just the way business was done. And so you made the call to start a company because it gave you the ability to be able to implement, utilize more exact measuring systems. You also brought it in a couple of very interesting times. What was it like starting out, man, in terms of, like I said, building the business in the midst of any hardships?
yeah, 2015 in Alberta, we were kind of in the middle of a recession,
Mm-hmm.
and things were getting tighter, and businesses were struggling, and
Mm-hmm.
I and then 5 years in to running our business, we had finally moved into our first office, and
Mm-hmm.
that was February 2015, and or sorry, February February 2020,
Yeah.
and March 17th, 2020, the whole world shut down. So we'd moved into a brand new office,
Mm-hmm.
2,000 square feet, had given our staff a place to live, and then we sent them all home a month later, and said, I guess we'll see you when we see you. And we had to keep trying to grow the business. But I think two things happened in the course of those situations.
Mm-hmm.
In the middle of a recession, it's no more important time than a recession to understand your business and the opportunity that can come with a recession.
Mm-hmm.
You have businesses who are struggling. They're tightening up. They're not spending in the marketplace. It doesn't mean that the customers aren't always there. It just
Right.
means that you have to maybe access them a little bit differently, and maybe offer a service in a bit different of a way. Not necessarily just discounting, but access to service maybe a bit different, and maybe your customer avatar needs to change because
Mm-hmm.
your high level enterprise client isn't spending, so now you need those foundational lower level clients at a higher rate, and you need to figure out how to get them, and then when the enterprise clients come back, you've now exponentially grown because you have
Yep.
this nice
Yep.
foundational piece of smaller businesses. So, in a recession is a great time to start a business like a marketing company because
That's you.
you're in need. It's
It
a
didn't
hard
feel
time.
like it.
Say that again, sorry.
I said it didn't feel like it, but I know what you mean, right?
That's right. Yeah. If I would say if we were just doing things the way they were always done,
Right.
it would have been harder for us to get started.
Mm-hmm.
But we simplified our business to a point where when we got started, all we said was we're going to do banner ads. Banner ads have the highest ability to track to a point of sale.
Mm-hmm.
So they're display banners that go all over the internet. We can target people who click on, or target, we can get data on people who click on them and also data on people who don't click on them but do research after and find their way to a website.
Mm-hmm.
And then we can get data through their customer journey to a point of sale, and we can get revenue. We can get lead forms. We can get phone calls. We can capture data on everything that happens from the delivery of an ad to the actual conversion or final sale. And so when we came to the market, what we was a data company. We were
Mm-hmm.
just clued in on, we've got a solution to run a campaign that gives you clarity on data. And after we sort of get our foot in the door, we're going to say, well, we are also Google ad experts. We're also social media ad experts.
Yeah.
We can build websites. We can do SEO. But ultimately, our foot in the door was the data side.
Right.
So we had something that the corporation wasn't selling. We had something that lots of agencies don't offer. And it's not because they can't. It's because they choose not to for two reasons. A, they've either got way too many clients and they don't want to plug in the data and they don't want to capture it because it's just too much work. They've already got a system in place with their clients that works for them. And that's just how they're going to continue to do things. That's the corporate world. The agency world is, if I sell branding, I build you the nicest brand. I build you some really nice assets. I build you a nice website. I build you a great billboard. Ultimately, the brand will do the work. And if you don't get sales, you need to invest more money into more visibility of the brand. But you're not necessarily investing into, did that brand get sales? How did it get sales? Was there anything that you could potentially scale? Was there any data? Build the brand, build the brand, build the brand. That's the way that large agencies work. And they don't have awareness, at least they did into 2015, to the way that you could potentially track to a point of sale. Right. So they weren't offering it. The corporations weren't offering it. And, the little guy like us just said, it's data first. It's data or nothing. And then the way that we took this into the market was, we need to get as deep inside your business as possible. We need to understand the gaps that are happening in your business. We had to understand what marketing as a solution truly means. Yes, I can sell you a banner ad. Yes, I can help you get data. But now I'm going to take a step further and I'm going to become an extension of your marketing team. And so when we did that at the beginning, it helped us, again, build long-term sustainable relationships with our clients. Most agencies lose clients in 12 to 18 months. That's the average churn and burn. If you can hold a client for longer than 18 months, you've got something. So today, we've had clients for over 8 years. We've had many clients for between 3 and 5 years. And the only reason we've lost large clients is because we've trained them to do everything that they need to do. And they've decided to hire people internally, and they've taken the work away from us. And there's nothing we can do about that. We work in accounts that are owned by the business. We build full transparency on what we're doing and how we're doing it. Right. They understand what type of data we're looking for. They understand, how to capture and utilize that data, because we're not hiding anything from them. As a part of their team, clarity and transparency is ultimately the most important thing. And so you lose a client sometimes because you taught them what to do. And that's, that is what it is. And that's
cost of doing business.
Less frequently do we lose clients because there wasn't a return on their investment. The only time we lose a client that didn't see a strong ROI was because they didn't budget enough to be competitive in their marketplace. And then when we showed them their total share of voice based on their budget in the market, it wasn't enough, and they weren't willing to invest into scale. Many of our clients, start at $2,000 to $5,000 a month. They
Right.
can see exactly what that's getting them in terms of Google Ads visibility, social impressions, and market share. And then they can also determine what their cost per acquisition is and determine what their return on ad spend is, and then decide whether or not we're going to invest to scale, or if we're comfortable here with this level of market share, or if they're just not ready to go deep enough to
Right.
get the results. So those are the reasons we lose clients. But when we hit the pandemic in 2020, we had such sound relationships with our clients. We knew how to be mobile for them. So the only ones that we lost were restaurants, couldn't open, nothing you can do.
Right.
We were working with the all major sports teams in Calgary, and we still work with them now after the pandemic. But during the pandemic, there's no sports games, there's no events, there's no tickets.
Right.
It's a hard pause for almost 2 years. But they came right back to us because of the strong relationship that we had in the beginning. And also, I was able to, again, have a nice, clear conversation with John and with our employees that it was said, buckle up. We either lose the business today or we strap in and we go to market and we help people. And we took our sales hat off, we took our marketing hat off, and we started calling people and just saying, hey, how's it going? How's your family? How are you doing? And then it turned into, how's your business? What's going on? Where do you need support? And then we started just helping. I wrote a really long article on LinkedIn about how in the pandemic, marketing people were probably the given the most opportunity to help people.
You have the time. You had more time. Literally,
we had the time, we had the resources, we had the knowledge, and we had the ability. Now, whether or not you wanted to charge for that or you wanted to do it for free, that was your choice. The amount of stuff that we did in the pandemic that there was no invoice for was massive. And it proved to be extremely valuable. From March 2020 to June of 2020, we lost half of our revenue, just completely off the books. By the end of 2020, we had doubled our revenue from 2019. So we had essentially doubled our business in the 1 year of the pandemic after having lost half of it. That was
coming off that sort of a deficit. Let me ask you something from that topic, which is the following: as a data-driven company, and utilizing the hard numbers, and also whether it was during the pandemic when you were you were taking off your sales hats or whatever, or now, I mean, the same idea. I'm always curious as to numbers are great, they're critical. They're not just necessary, they're mission critical. But so often you find that companies want sizzle, story, and interesting stuff, so to speak. Whether it's the way they've always done business or it's just the bandwidth that they have or whatever. How do you make sure you put up a YouTube post at one time, a video a couple years ago, when you were literally talking about content creation and making it relatable? I'm curious in that regard. How do you make it fun? Like that guy that's starting out on the street. How did you make it fun for somebody that you would keep the business and grow the business as you did?
Yeah. I think it's just trying to be relatable to people because it's not fun if you're just grinding all the time. But if you're authentic and you're yourself and you're trying to just share your story about why did I choose to do this, and how do I think a business can sort of follow my path, that's fun. I think people, they get so deep inside their business, they kind of forget why they started it, or they kind of forget, what it means to grow it. So, I think taking people outside of their business and peeling back the curtains and having a conversation about where things kind of went off the rails, it excites people to go back into their business and see that there's an opportunity to see growth. Because a lot of the times, it's like we're in a world today, which I think small businesses and small to medium-sized businesses have such great opportunity because consumers want to work with small businesses. They want to work with the local business. They want to buy local. Yes, you're going to have these large enterprise companies who come in and own a market because they've got budget to do so. And but for a small business, you can look at that and kind of go, well, what are they doing that I'm not? How can I follow that sort of same scenario into the marketplace? The funny thing is, like, this is a really funny story I think that I like to tell, and I kind of take myself down this path too many times. But we now talk about the Taylor Swift effect in marketing.
Sure.
And so when we helped launch a basketball team here, and we thought about what would Taylor Swift do? And if you think about now the way that tickets are sold, it's all pre-sale, it's all sign up for pre-access.
Membership and join the fan club and all that sort of thing. Yeah.
And if you're not a part of the fan club, if you're not signed up to the newsletter, you're not going to get a ticket because it's going to be sold out before you get there.
Yep.
So even if there's tickets available, she's created this identity that says, like, if you didn't sign up at the beginning, then you're going to miss out. So she's created the fear of loss right out of the gate. And then, she finds ways through content to just keep you engaged and keep you in the community. So she's fear lost you to get into the community.
Right.
She's created great content to keep you engaging in the community. And then every time she releases something, merchandise or ticket sales, you're the first one to buy it because she's just kept you drinking the Kool-Aid.
Yep.
So we have to take that same approach to every business now. Whether it's, we used to run sales on the weekend. Well, you advertise it Thursday, Friday, Saturday. No, we advertise it for 2 weeks now. And we tell people to sign up to get pre-access to the sale. And then we launch the sale 24 hours early to everybody who signed up. And then we make sure that through that 2-week period, they're ingrained with what products could I be buying? Oh, there's also products on sale right now anyway. So even though I'm not into the sale, I can still buy products that are on sale, right? Like, so it's not just, this is a big celebrity who sells out stadiums. There's a marketing machine behind all of this that is actually not that difficult for a small business to learn from and begin to replicate some of that success. And content in today's world is more and more and more and more important, especially with the rise of AI. And when you look at these AI summaries that Google is sharing and Gemini is sharing, it's all based on your content. If you're not creating that content, somebody else is, and that AI machine is going to pull that content from another business. So not just creating blogs, but on-page content, blog content, video content, social content, getting involved in conversations on Reddit, getting involved in conversations on social media that people are talking about your industry and talking about your business. You just go. There's simple things that happen. My buddy started a landscaping company, and so you go into Facebook and you find all the community groups. And you go in and start looking for, who's asked about a lawn care company in this community? And then you share a link. And then my buddy says to me one day, he goes, all these random people are calling me. And I go, that's because I kind of went behind your back and I went into all these communities and I started putting that your business, even if these posts are 2 years old, they're still being found, right? Yep. So where are these conversations happening? Where can you create content? Where can you participate? It's amazing how quickly things can turn in your favor if you're just paying attention to where people are talking about your type of business or your industry. So these are fun things that people don't even think about, and
I love the funness of that. Hey, you make things fun in a sense that, look, as a Calgary business and all things Calgary, whether it's sports team and or tourism and or the marketing and or the businesses. By the way, that player that would be off of your right shoulder, I guess, who is that?
Lanny McDonald.
Thank you. I'm a much better hockey fan than I used to be. There you go. Now I recognize, right? So I'm grateful. Thank God for the Dave Scatchers of the world who I've worked with, and the Jeremy Roenick's that both literally educate me more and more in terms of the sport. So I love seeing that. And I love seeing the bobblehead doll. I think that part's great. In terms of you being your company, not just you, uh, being so out and about in the face of things, how were you able to? You talked about behemoth companies coming in and trying to, like, conquer a market, or how did you do that? How were you able to absorb with all of what I feel event destination and high profile things? How'd you make it happen?
Yeah, we live and die by the strategic alliances. I think that's really important, not just in marketing, any business. You have to identify who your strategic partners are
Mhm.
and what those alliances look like. So, in marketing, it's the typical, well, if I don't have a graphic designer, I want to be partnered with one. If I don't have a web designer, I want to be partnered with one. That's
Right.
part of it. But the other side of it is, we've got business coaches, we've got marketing consultants, we've got
Mhm.
accountants, bookkeepers, tax people. We've got financial planners, whatever it is. There's a long laundry list of people who we need access to. So you just start finding where these people are spending their time and what groups they're spending their time in, and you
Mhm.
start building, your sort of strategic alliance by joining these groups. And then over time, you start finding more and more and more. So yeah, lots of businesses like mine, 80% of the business is referral. You have to figure out where to generate those referrals from.
Mhm.
You have to, find a way to get on stage, and you have to find a way to perform and give talks. I've given lots of webinars. I've
Mhm.
given lots of talks on the stage. But I find really interesting business groups. We've got a really great group here in Calgary called 20 Fine Gentlemen. It's actually about 120 people who have joined the group now, but it's the first 20 every month that sign up get to go to the meeting,
Oh,
and
wow.
it's
Cool,
a
man.
race.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a
Right.
race,
Yep.
and then every 3 months we might do a larger event so everybody
Mhm.
can participate. But we've got everything from city councilors
Mhm.
to business leaders to um, business coaches and
Mhm.
just everything in that group. And then for me, we're the lead agency for the Better Business Bureau
Right.
in Alberta, Canada, and British Columbia, Canada.
Mhm.
So we're always working with them, and we're also looking at the tech community.
Mm.
How can we be involved with the tech
Mhm.
community? Our give back to the tech community has always been I could work with 50 businesses, and I need maybe 5 of them to turn into clients.
Mm.
So I can help support the tech community with a go-to-market strategy so they can actually understand how they're going to spend money before they go to an investor and ask for it.
Ah,
So
okay.
that's really important. Again, it's finding ways to use your skills and knowledge without necessarily always having to charge for it everywhere you go. The customers will come. It's just a matter of just being in the community and giving back and being visible. And then I'm a marketing guy. I wear the logo everywhere I go. I sponsor
Good,
golf
man.
tournaments
Right.
just to hang the
Yep.
banner. They ask me, "Do you want to play golf?" No, I want to stand at the hole and I want to meet 120 people today.
Mhm.
I find conferences that I can just meet people,
Mhm.
and we're always giving stuff away. Again, marketing companies, we have access to tickets to things,
Sure.
events. We
Sure.
know what's going on in the community,
Mhm.
so we can share that. But for any business, these are things that are really replicable. Just being able to get in the community and just say, "Hey, we exist. We're going to give something away so we can get some information about you, and then we're going to share some content to
Mhm.
again get you living within our world, and then we're going to make it exciting for you to be a part of our company." There's a million things that you can do, but for me, it's just open eyes. It's getting harder. I've got 3 kids. I'm the president of my community association. I'm on the board for a large recreation center here in Calgary.
Mm.
But again, I'm at a point 10 years in the business. I'm always sharing with our team. Here's events that you could go to. Here's things that you could do in the community. And just trying to be involved. We had our whole team ran in one of the Calgary marathons
I saw
here
that.
this year.
Right. I saw very cool. I saw that, man.
Yeah, not something we've ever done before.
Mhm.
But again, it was a referral. And, again, coming along with do we want to work with this person was how can we actually participate in the marathon?
Mhm.
And so that's what's fun. It's just
Mhm.
like there's no like, oh, I'm gonna take on a client and we're not gonna, drink their Kool-Aid and do what they do. It's how do we if they're going to have a conference, we're going to go. If they're going to do something, we're going to be there, and that's then we're so ingrained in the business that the relationships keep growing. And again, we learn little things about their business just by being there.
I
So
think that you just literally answered the question that was on my mind, which was how, like, for a data-driven company, how do you make it exciting and engaging? And you just demonstrated how in a million ways. You also said something cool. I love the fact you had put up a post. It was one of your kids, in regards to a music awards, where you were able to, like, bring. What does that feel like as a dad, even? You know what I mean? That you're given that chance for your son. Like, how was that?
yeah, it's super cool. I mean, at the other side of it now, he thinks that anytime he wants to go to a concert, he just
Oh,
asks
sure.
me,
I'll
and I'll
be the
get the
suite.
tickets. But
I'll be in the suite, and I'll be and here's my menu order.
but yeah, but no, it's how many people get to do stuff like that,
Right.
with their kids, and but my dad was a politician. My playground when I was a kid, from
Right.
the time I was 3 until the time I was 12, was the Parliament buildings in Ottawa. Full access pass. We're talking about the late 80s and early 90s, where security, maybe didn't stop my sister and I from running around as much as they should have.
Right.
So we went to work. We went to work with him. We spent time with him. We went to major international conferences. We went to lots of events. We went to community events, community suppers. I rode the campaign trail. I sat in the back of the car during the parade.
Yeah.
I learned what it was like just to be in that environment as a kid, and I think it's really important for my kids to learn the same thing. So if they have an off day at school, they're coming to the office, and they might just bring an activity book and color,
Yeah.
but they're pretending like they're at work. And I've seen it in my basement where my kids find business cards, and one of them's Dave and one of them's John, and they both work for In-Front Marketing. Like it's actually quite hilarious, but they've just been around. They've been around it so much, and I found it really interesting actually at that music event.
Right.
Somebody said to me, "I didn't want to talk business with your kids there, so we were just talking about life."
Whatever.
And I
Right.
said, "What's funny is you would never have to pause that conversation because I'm unapologetically a parent. I bring my kids, if it's the right scenario, I will bring my kids to a meeting. I had a meeting at a golf course, and my daughter came with me. She's 3. She fell asleep on me, and it was a community association meeting. It wasn't a business meeting, so I didn't feel like it was the wrong setting, and I addressed it in the conversation with the person I was with to understand their viewpoint, and again, it was welcome. I think people, and especially men, should realize that it's important to be at the dinner table. It's important to be with your family. Women, unfortunately, get shamed a
Yeah.
lot of times for prioritizing their
Yeah.
family. So I think men need to do 2 things in that scenario, and again, empower the people around them to, if you need to run home because your kid's sick, it doesn't mean that you can't work. Sometimes it just means that maybe you have to work differently. If you have to pick your kids up from school, fine. It happens. It is what it is sometimes. But laying that out, especially when you hire somebody, laying that out at the beginning so the expectations are set is important. Understanding what scenarios you can put your kids in that they can thrive, and they can also not be disruptive is important. And also understanding your clients and whether or not they might welcome something like that, or they might see it as a problem before you put anybody in that situation is important. But in doing all of that, it gives you a good opportunity to give your kids some amazing experiences and take them to events, or take them into the business, or take them into meetings. And then, my kid had to do, he's certainly not a public speaker, but everything that he's had to do in school, he's just gone and done it. There hasn't really been like oh, I have to do this. It's kind of like I don't really like doing this, but I'm comfortable enough to do it because he sees what I do. He sees what we do in the house. And and he understands that, yeah, it might be a little bit of anxiety that goes into doing some of these things when it comes to public speaking, but it's not that bad when it's all said and done. And there's typically something rewarding that comes along with doing it. So now he always asks me about my meetings, asks me about what's going on in the business. Being in marketing is cool for kids because I always tell them, oh, we went to the kangaroo farm, and we're helping market the kangaroo farm. We're helping market the zip line company. We're shooting videos, at a car dealership, and this is the cool car that I saw today, or, like there's, so, not every job that parents do is fun and exciting. But every kid grows up wanting to do what their parents do at some point,
And
right?
loves being
So,
included.
and they like being included for sure.
You mind if I ask just one more question for the moment, which is literally this, which would be the sense of you've got three kids that are absorbing information right now and getting these experiences, and they're all individuals, but obviously, and what I would ask you is, what would you like to empower them with at this time? Like, what would be something you'd wish for them in regards to as you share all of this information? What is it you would want them to do with it?
Yeah. Just find their own path, like they don't have to do what I do, but they can recognize that if their eyes are open, opportunities are going to present themselves, and then weighing out whether or not those are good opportunities or bad, and having somebody like me or my wife to bounce ideas off of, because they can recognize that we've been through some of these things. My
Right.
kids are still 10 and under, right? So
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
they're still talking to us, which is good. We'll see what as that
Limited
changes. I
window,
know
so you've got a couple of years before
as
that
kids
door
get older, they
closes.
disconnect. They disconnect a bit, and then they reconnect. And I,
Yep.
I disconnected from my family for a while, and then I reconnected. In my early 20s, and it was a
Mhm.
choice that I made to have a relationship with my family in a way that I wanted it, and that's not going to be true for everybody. Families get separated, and not everybody can support each other in the same way, and that just is what it is. But in the long term outlook, I want my kids to travel. I want my kids to explore the
Mhm.
world. I want my kids to know that there's more to life than just work. But if you don't have a good foundation, a good job, if you're not focused on growing yourself professionally, it makes it hard to grow yourself, financially, but
Mm.
also just individually. So be yourself, find what you like to do.
Mhm.
I don't like when my kids quit things,
Mm.
but I
Mhm.
like them to try things.
Okay.
So the more you try and the more you learn, unfortunately, that means you're going to quit a lot of things
Yeah.
in life.
Mhm.
But I think doing it with, okay, I tried it for this reason.
Mhm.
This is why I wanted to do it. This is why I don't want to do it anymore. And this is what I'm going to try next.
Mhm.
And then just going all in when you find something that really gets them excited about stuff. I don't know. For me, I don't think that far ahead in the future when it comes to the kids. I just know how impactful it was for me to spend time with my dad at the office and in a professional environment. I know how impactful it was for me to have really good mentors, not just when I was a kid, but even in the corporate world. I had really, really good mentors,
Mhm.
and so I think again, it's just telling them to keep their head up, keep their eyes open,
Mhm.
understand there's going to be lots of really good opportunities, and there's going to be lots of challenges,
Mhm.
and those decisions. I would say the hardest decisions come with the least amount of time to make them.
Mm.
So you have to be prepared to make a really hard decision at some point in your life where you're not going to have very much time to decide what you think or how you feel about it. And that's just the way things go.
Right.
So you gotta give them the
Mhm.
resources to make those decisions, and that means putting them in really difficult environments.
Mhm.
Difficult environments in like a working environment where they have to be quiet and they have to be respectful and they have to
Yep.
be patient. They also have to find some independence in that environment,
Mhm.
find their own sort of role, their own space. These are really, really important things, and it can all be done just by spending a couple of days at the office or spending a couple of days
Mhm.
coming to and from work. Like the bring your child to work day should be a thing everywhere, but I understand it's not. So just finding ways and environments to put your kids in that are challenging and allow for some independence and some critical thinking, this goes such a long way.
Dave Taylor, I'm delighted that you made this time for me. First thing I looked up when I was checking, sounds weird when I was checking you out, was on your website where you talked about, hey, we're a bunch of curious marketers. And I really like the fact that you instill that in your family, that you instill that with your team. And speaking of websites, you got a great one. I'll make certain that that website is in the bio so that no one will have to guess or wonder how to get at you. Is that the best way to find you?
Yeah, infrontmarketing.ca. It's the easiest way to get access to our team. You can contact me directly through there. LinkedIn, there's a million Dave Taylors, but if
we'll have the one, we'll have you. I'll do that heavy due diligence and find the Dave Taylor, who, by the way, just reached out to you to be your Facebook or your LinkedIn pal. So we'll have the correct link with all of that. So that excites me, man. It really does. You made this great.
And I welcome one-to-one connections. I like to just get to know people. That's how I grew my LinkedIn network, was, again, just learning about people and having one-to-one conversations. So, people that are students in marketing, people that are looking to start their own business and just want some guidance, some advice, or just a conversation, I welcome that. And then also businesses that are struggling to grow, or businesses that are working with agencies that aren't getting proper levels of data. Right. Maybe just want another set of eyes. Like I say, it's an audit is always something we're willing to do, just to give you some insight into what's happening in your business. There's lots and lots of really good things we can do just by having a conversation with people. So thank you, John. This has been great, and I really welcome anybody that's listening to reach out.
Dude, that's how it started in the beginning of that was the 5-minute conversation. So I'm delighted you made time for me today, which you gave me a lot more than 5 minutes. So I'm very grateful for that. And folks, you've just heard another episode of Your Message Received. Keep liking, watching, sharing, telling all your friends. And we'll keep driving content through your front door. John Duffin here with Duffin Media. Have a great rest of the day, all. Be good. Bye.
And now, making its way across the finish line, Your Message Received has been a production of Duffin Media.